Over the last few years, I've been creating content not only for myself, but for also brands, influencers, musicians, and artists, a whole host of different people. And I've gone through a bunch of different cameras. And this is what I've learned over the years. Beginners have this misconception that buying gear is going to make your content really stand out and really look good. They feel like the more cameras I buy, the more equipment I buy, the better I'm going to be at creating content. But let me tell you from my own experience, that is far from the truth. Having more cameras sometimes just creates decision fatigue, and that's what you're probably trying to avoid. You want to be in a situation where you know exactly what your equipment is going to be used for, and you want to have that gear confidence. In this video, by the end of it, you should know exactly which two cameras you need to create some amazing content and to capture every single moment without missing anything. The first camera, this is the camera that you probably already have in your pocket or at least somewhere in your room. And I like to call this the everyday camera. And for me, my everyday camera is my iPhone 17 Pro Max, which I got in September. And when I tell you, I carry this camera with me everywhere, and it honestly is the camera that I use pretty much every single day. If you have something like an iPhone or the latest Android phone, these phones are great because they can capture 4K quality, usually 4K 120 or at least 4K 60. You can capture great photos with it. When we compare between the DJI and then the iPhone, a very quick summary, 9 times out of 10 will opt for my iPhone because I find it's just a little bit more convenient compared to the DJI, and I also most times have the iPhone on me, and if I'm using my DJI, I'm probably creating content specifically for social media. And I found over the last few months and years, there are a lot of advantages between the two and also some disadvantages between the two. But if you want a dedicated video comparing the two, I will do that for you guys. But if I were to pick one for most people, I would say just start with your iPhone and then maybe pick up the DJI as the everyday camera. Now, don't get me wrong, the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 and also now the Pocket 4, these are fantastic everyday cameras. The point I'm making is most of you probably already have a really good everyday camera, being your iPhone. But if you don't have the latest version of the iPhone and your budget isn't as big, then maybe the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 or 4 is the perfect everyday camera that you're looking for, specifically for vloggers. Now, if you want to get into taking pictures, then the Osmo Pocket 3 wouldn't be the best choice, and then the iPhone would be. And that's just a few of the reasons as to why I prefer the iPhone of the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 or 4. The purpose of the everyday camera is for, as the name states, everyday shooting. It's not intended to be perfect or amazing, but its main purpose is to actually capture your idea quickly and fast, because what I've learned about the everyday camera is that it prioritizes speed over perfection. If I want to record something like what you're seeing on the screen right now, it takes time. There's a bunch of extra steps to get this final shot. Whereas if I want to shoot this with my iPhone, I literally have to pick it up and hit record and make sure I've got decent enough light. And it is really just that simple with your everyday camera. It doesn't gatekeep you from creating some amazing content because you probably already have it with you. Now, the everyday camera is great, and whether it's your DJI or your iPhone, it's going to give you some really good content. However, it's not perfect. But let's go through some of the advantages of that camera first. The most important one is the fact that it's always with you and it doesn't feel like you're lugging around a bunch of gear. So it allows me to capture those spontaneous moments. And not only can I capture spontaneous moments really quickly, but I can also edit them just as fast. Like I've been at times where I've shot something and had it live on social media within 10-20 minutes of me going from idea, shoot, to having it posted. I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't want to be lugging around a massive camera in these small spaces or these small rooms. Not everybody is going to be comfortable with you using a big DSLR mirrorless camera recording content with a massive lens. But with something like your iPhone, you almost just blend in and you don't stand out at all, which definitely does make life a lot easier, especially if you're just a beginner and maybe you're still building up that confidence to record in public. The great thing about something like the iPhone is that it actually has 3 lenses built in. When I compare this to something like my mirrorless camera or my dedicated camera, I have to swap lenses if I want to go from wide to macro to close up to whatever. But with the iPhone, everything is already built in. So that gives me a lot more versatility in the palm of my hand. Is that it has a low barrier to entry. In a sense that if I were to give my mum my iPhone and say record a video, she could record a video with no issues. Would it be perfect or amazing? No. But if I gave her my camera, we might not get a video or anything. The everyday camera is great, but it'll be unfair if I don't tell you some of the disadvantages as well. It has the 3 smaller sensors built onto the camera to handle low light as well as it does compared to some of my other cameras. The storage conflicts. Let me explain. If you record a bunch of videos on your iPhone, you now have a bunch of videos on your iPhone, but your iPhone isn't just a camera. I'm pretty sure, just like you, just like me, you use your iPhone for a bunch of different things. So that now creates a storage conflict because you might have videos from a trip you went on last year, and you might have another video for your new YouTube video. That's a conflict of interest. Maybe not conflict of interest, but it's a conflict of storage because essentially now you might have to delete some precious memories or have to store it elsewhere, then pay for iCloud or get a hard drive, and now the costs start to rack up. So the dedicated camera, I like to think of this as your serious camera. This is the camera you're going to use to create your talking videos, your YouTube essays, maybe some high quality vlogs. This is going to be your camera dedicated for creating some high quality and amazing content. Because with this camera, I like to think of it as you're shooting with intention. With something like your everyday camera, you're kind of just picking up and shooting whatever feels right at the time. But every time, for me anyway, when I pick up my dedicated camera, I know exactly what I'm shooting for. And 9 times out of 10, if not 7 out of 10, I planned out exactly what I'm going to shoot with that. But my recommendation is to pick up a mirrorless camera. And the good thing about the dedicated camera is that it doesn't need to be expensive. You do not need to go and spend £2,000 to £3,000 buying something like a Sony a7 IV if your budget doesn't allow for it. Something like the ZV-E10 will be a great dedicated camera for a lot of people. It's small, it's portable, shoots 4K, does great photos. This is not to say that content from your everyday camera looks bad. The level of your quality just goes that step above, and trust me, your audience will notice those small little things. Not to say you have to do it, but at least with a dedicated camera, you have the option. With a dedicated camera, you have a much larger sensor, so innately you're going to get much better quality, but also superior low light performance. And that is really important if you shoot outdoors or you shoot out and about, because a lot of the times when I'm shooting at night or at dark with my iPhone, the content isn't really the best, and you can always tell when this content has been shot at night. You also have the ability to change lenses, right? Changing lenses is actually a big deal if you want to have a lot of versatility in your shots. You can change from a 16 to an 85, a 200. It's not a one size fits all for your ideas. Sometimes you need to change lenses to better tell your story. It also gives a subtle credibility signal. This isn't a massive deal because if you know how to use an iPhone, you can achieve it with an iPhone. But with a dedicated camera, it just stands out a little bit more. And of course, with something like a camera, specifically for my Sony shooters, you have things like S-Log. And S-Log is far superior to Apple Log. Again, I'm not here to on Apple or everyday cameras or say they're not bad. I'm just here to tell you that yes, the camera is better, and S-Log definitely is better than Apple Log or any D-Log M they're going to get from your everyday camera. So with that being said, it means that the color science and what you can do with your camera in terms of pushing the dynamic range or your highlights or really getting a certain look is going to be much better on your camera compared to your iPhone, and that can really help push and tell your story even further. Not to say the dedicated camera is perfect, it's not. To buy a dedicated camera isn't cheap. Something like my FX3 or my A7 IV setup, they're looking at about £2,000 to £3,000 for a camera, a lens, and a few of the accessories. And if you buy something like a ZV-E10 or maybe a ZV-E1, you're looking at about £800 plus just to get the body and then the lens. So the upfront cost is already significantly higher. You actually need a lot more accessories than you would think to really make sure your camera stands out. And it also comes with a learning curve. With something like your iPhone, DJI, or everyday camera, it's super simple to hit record and get great looking content. With something like a camera or a dedicated camera, you actually have to learn about the exposure triangle. You have to learn about your ISO, you have to learn about aperture, the f-stop, shutter speed, all these new things you have to learn about. And then don't even get me started on color grading and how to actually color grade that amazing S-Log footage. Because although you can use a one-click grade or slap on a lot, it might not be to your liking. So you have to now spend more time learning how to adjust your footage. It's probably not going to be with you all the time. So that means you're going to miss a lot of spontaneous moments. It's also bigger, it's bulkier, and it's a little heavier to carry around. If you are a creator like myself that wants to shoot out in public, it can make other people feel a little bit uncomfortable when they see a massive camera. Although this is a small camera, but it can be a bit of a pain for other people to see a big camera and a massive lens, people trying to shoot space. So it can be a bit of a nuisance. When you weigh up both options of the dedicated camera and the everyday camera, you'll learn very quickly that neither of them are actually perfect. And that's just the honest truth. What I've realized is that they cover each other where they lack or they have some sort of weakness. That's why I think it's important for most people to actually have two cameras. Because if you think about it, the everyday camera fits into that quantity, making sure you're recording as much as you can and capturing when you can. Whereas the dedicated camera feeds more into the quality and getting the most out of your content. I will say for some people out there, you might think about an extra camera, and I think that's absolutely fine. Because if I were to add a third camera into this mix up, it'll be something like a creative camera to add more to your shots. Maybe it's a second camera if you want to have a second angle, like right now I'm shooting top down, I'm shooting a top down shot. Or maybe it's something like a drone to get those wide angle shots or environmental shots. Or maybe something like a 360 camera to get shots around you driving the car or whatever it may be. But in reality, at least have these two different cameras and that'll get you covered for most of the things you're going to create, if not everything. Because what I've learned as someone creating content over the last few years is that it's not gear that's going to make you a better creator. It's just getting the reps in and actually using more of what you already have or what you go and pick up. So don't feel like you have to go and buy a whole bunch of new gear. If you want to start with just the everyday camera, I'm sure you can. But I would recommend, if you have the budget to do so, pick up a dedicated camera to really help get the best out of your content. Anyway, that's it from me. You're just going to recommend a video you should watch, so make sure you watch it. And if you're not already, make sure to subscribe and click a like. And let me know the current cameras you're using and if you feel like I missed something or there's another camera you would recommend. Anyway, I'm out. Peace. And if you're a beginner, something like the ZV-E10 is a fantastic camera. And if you have a bigger budget, maybe something like the ZV-E1, which is more dedicated to creating some high quality videos. But the idea is having some sort of high quality dedicated camera. I'd also recommend something like the A7C2 or the A7 IV if you are looking to be a hybrid shooter, shooting both photos and videos, or you're not really too sure which area you want to focus on.